I stood in silence behind the glass door of the daycare, holding my son's lunchbox. That's when I saw it, my husband kneeling down, kissing a little boy's forehead. The boy smiled and said, "Thank you, Daddy." But that wasn't my child. My son was across the room, watching the whole thing. And when he asked me, "Mom, why did Daddy choose him instead of me?" I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just smiled, texted a lawyer, and booked 2 one-way tickets. 2 hours later, I was still shaking. The lunchbox was still in my hand, unopened. I hadn't eaten. My son hadn't either, he refused. "I'm not hungry," he whispered, eyes glassy. "Maybe Dad will come get me after school." He wouldn't. I knew that now. I'd spent years making excuses. Daddy's working late. He loves you in his own way. Some daddies are just quiet. But this wasn't silence. This was abandonment wrapped in affection, for someone else's child. The boy Caleb had kissed was Jennifer's. Yes, that Jennifer. The ex who meant nothing. The woman who showed up a year after we married, needing a job, a fresh start, and a shoulder to cry on. My husband had offered her all 3, plus a company apartment and, apparently, a replacement family. And now here he was, smiling like a father, doting on her son, while ours watched from a distance, forgotten. My son didn't cry. He didn't throw a tantrum. He simply stared at his father, then turned to me with the kind of question no mother should have to answer. "Why him, Mom? What did I do wrong?" I squeezed his hand so tightly I was afraid I'd hurt him. But he didn't flinch. He just looked down at his feet. When we got home, he went straight to his room. No cartoons. No toys. Just silence. I stood by the door, listening to his breathing, wondering if I should finally do what I'd rehearsed in my head 1,000 times, leave. I picked up the phone and scrolled through my gallery. Birthday photos. Just 3 weeks ago. A homemade cake. Frosting smeared across his cheek. 1 candle. 1 chair. 1 child. No dad. Instead, there was a package that had arrived that morning. It was wrapped perfectly, with Caleb's handwriting on the tag, to Ethan. Ethan. Not my son's name. My son had laughed. He must have been sleepy when he wrote it, right? I'd smiled. Probably. Inside the package, a deluxe peanut butter cookie set. We'd gone straight to the hospital. Caleb had texted that night. Didn't know. Just wanted to send something. But this wasn't the first time. 6 months ago, after another missed visitation, he'd dropped off a box of granola bars. Peanut-filled. My son had taken 1 bite and spent 2 days in an oxygen tent. And yet, each time, I forgave. Why? Because I thought my son needed a father more than I needed peace. Because I believed Caleb would change. Because I thought, maybe, if we just waited long enough, he'd come back to us. Now I knew. He never left us. He just walked to someone else. And now I'd watched it with my own eyes. I took a deep breath and walked into my son's room. He was sitting on the floor, toy cars lined up in a neat row. The birthday ones Caleb never saw. "Hey," I said softly. "Are we going to France?" he asked. My breath caught. "What?" "You always say that when things get bad, we'll go to France and live in a flower shop. Like Aunt Mia. I blinked. I'd only mentioned that once, when he had asked why Dad never came to sports day. He hadn't forgotten. I swallowed the lump in my throat and knelt beside him. "Would you like that?" I asked. He didn't answer right away. He picked up one of the toy cars and studied it. Then said, "Do they have peanut-free cookies there?" I laughed. I couldn't help it. It was dry, cracked, ridiculous laughter, but it was real. "Yes. And chocolate ones too." He looked up at me and nodded. That night, while he slept with his little hand curled in mine, I texted Mia. "Is your guest room still empty?" She replied instantly. "Come. Don't even pack. Just come." By morning, I'd spoken to a lawyer. By noon, I'd filed a temporary withdrawal from my job. By dinner, the tickets were booked. 1 way. 2 seats. Me and the only boy who ever called me mom with his whole heart. We were supposed to be a family. That was the promise he made the day our son was born. He had held my hand in that hospital room and whispered, "I'll take care of you both. Forever." Forever lasted until his ex came back. I remember the first time I met Jennifer. She had the kind of face that made men turn. Glossy hair, confident smirk, voice like she was always halfway into a secret. She'd been gone for years, but when she came back, it was like no time had passed between them. She said she just wanted a job. Caleb offered her one without asking me. "Temporary," he said. "She's trying to get back on her feet." But temporary things have a way of making themselves comfortable. The business dinners started. Then the late nights. Then the quiet phone calls on the balcony. I'd ask him, "Are you seeing her again?" He'd smile. "Of course not. Don't be paranoid." But when I found her earring under our couch, one I'd never worn, he said, "Maybe the cleaning lady knocked something over." We didn't have a cleaning lady. Still, I stayed. For our son. I watched Caleb grow colder at home but warmer on social media. I saw him like every picture Jennifer posted. Birthday posts. Ice cream outings. Even a Mother's Day post, she captioned it, "Thank you for always being there, even when you didn't have to be." The comments were full of hearts. My son saw it too. One night, while brushing his teeth, he asked me, "Why does Daddy live in 2 houses?" I froze. He doesn't. He just visits. But he says goodnight to Ethan in the comments. He never says it to me. Ethan. Jennifer's son. The one Caleb kisses on the forehead at daycare. The one who wears his watch. The one who calls him daddy. The first time my son heard that word from someone else's mouth, he flinched. I pretended not to notice. That week, Caleb promised to take him to the movies. My son put on his favorite superhero shirt, waited by the window for 2 hours. Caleb never showed. Instead, he sent tickets over email, with a note. "Take him. I've got a meeting. Tell him I'm sorry." I told my son we'd go another day. He said, "Can we go with someone who wants to be there?" That night, he didn't sleep. He just curled up beside me and asked, "Would you still love me if I wasn't your kid?" I said, "There's no world where you're not mine." But I knew what he meant. He meant, "Would you still love me if I were Jennifer's?" The next day, I started packing. I told Caleb we needed to talk. He replied, "Busy. Make it quick." I didn't. I went through the storage cabinet. Found the photo albums, our wedding, the hospital room, first steps. He wasn't in most of them. My son's first school play, he missed it. First time riding a bike, he was in Shanghai. First allergy scare, he was asleep with his phone off. When I called that time from the emergency room, he answered on the 5th ring and said, "You handle it. You're the mom." I was. And now, I'd also be the dad. Because clearly, he had other priorities. One night, as I was clearing dishes, I heard laughter from my son's room. I peeked in, he was watching something on Caleb's social feed. A video of Caleb, Jennifer, and Ethan playing soccer. My son had paused it on a frame where Caleb was lifting Ethan up in the air. He zoomed in. Stared at it for a long time. Then quietly asked, "Do you think he throws me that high too?" I lied. "Higher." He smiled. And I broke inside. A few days later, Caleb finally came by. He brought a drone, something high-end and flashy. "Where's my little man?" he called out, holding the box like a trophy. My son came running, until he saw what was in Caleb's hand. He froze. His eyes flicked to mine, then back to Caleb. "That's the one Ethan has," he whispered. I hadn't noticed it before, but he was right. Caleb had bought the same model. My son took the box slowly, said thank you, then turned around and walked back to his room. Caleb looked confused. "What's wrong with him?" I said, "You're trying to win a child you already lost." He scoffed. "He's a kid. He'll get over it." "No," I said. "He remembers everything. That's the difference between you and him." Caleb didn't reply. That evening, my son came up to me and said, "If we go to France, can I learn to make coffee like you?" I smiled. Of course. Will Dad come too? No, I said. He paused. Will he be sad? I thought about it. He'll realize something when it's too late. My son nodded. Okay. Then let's go before he realizes. That night, I messaged MIA and confirmed our arrival date. I didn't tell Caleb. But I did leave him a note. It wasn't angry. It wasn't bitter. It just said, "You were given 7 years to show up. We're done waiting." I placed it inside the Lego box he had never opened, the one our son brought home as a surprise for Daddy. He never once touched it. Now it was the last thing he'd find from us. Alongside that note, I left something else. A list of every birthday Caleb had missed. Every hospital visit. Every time our son asked, "Does Dad love me?" I didn't expect him to read it. But I hoped, just maybe, he'd finally feel what it's like to be forgotten. 2 days before our flight, I decided to do one last thing, for my son, not for Caleb. I told him we could go anywhere he wanted. A final goodbye to the city he'd grown up in. He didn't hesitate. "Can we go to the amusement park? The one with the carousel and the paddle boats?" I said yes, of course. Then came the part one dreaded. He looked up at me with that same hopeful smile he wore every time Caleb made a promise. "Do you think Dad could come too? Maybe he'll show up if I ask nicely." I opened my mouth to lie, to dodge, to protect him again, but then stopped. "If you really want him there," I said gently, "you can invite him yourself." So he did. He called, clutching the phone with both hands like it might shatter. "Hi Dad, it's me. I was just wondering if you wanted to come to the amusement park with me and Mom on Friday. I know you're busy, but if you're free, it would mean a lot." There was a long pause. Then Caleb's voice came through. "Sure. I'll be there. Promise." My son's whole face lit up like he'd swallowed the sun. He said yes, he shouted, bouncing on his heels. I smiled. But in my chest, there was only dread. Because Caleb never kept promises, not to our son. And definitely not when Jennifer was involved. Still, I packed snacks, water, tissues, sunblock. Everything a child might need for a happy day. Maybe, I thought, just maybe this one time he'll show. We waited at the entrance for an hour past the meeting time. The sun started dipping. I kept checking my phone. No messages. No updates. My son didn't ask. He just kept looking at the gates. Finally, as the park was about to close, he looked up at me and said, "It's okay, Mom. We can go in by ourselves. Dad probably got stuck in traffic." He still protected him. We walked in hand, making our way to the carousel. That's when it happened. As we passed the picnic area near the arcade, I saw a familiar jacket. Navy blue. With the leather cuffs Caleb liked. I froze. Sitting on a bench, holding a balloon, was Caleb. Next to him, eating popcorn, was Jennifer's son. My son stopped, staring. "Daddy," he called, confused, hopeful. Caleb looked up, startled. His eyes widened. His mouth opened, but not in joy. "What are you doing here?" he blurted out. I was too stunned to speak. But before I could react, Jennifer's son jumped up and wrapped himself around Caleb's leg. "Go away," he snapped at my son. "This is my daddy." I grabbed my son's shoulder, instinctively pulling him back. Caleb stood. "George didn't mean it," he said. "He's just." "You said you were coming for me," my son said, voice cracking. Caleb stepped forward, guilt flashing across his face. "I know. Things changed last minute." "But you're here," my son whispered. "You were already here." Jennifer arrived moments later, holding 2 ice creams. She smiled at Caleb, then looked at me. Her eyes narrowed, calculating. "Oh. I didn't know we were having a party," she said with a smirk. My son looked between them all, Caleb, Jennifer, George, and something in his face changed. He let go of my hand and walked up to Caleb. "Can I still come with you?" Caleb hesitated. Looked at Jennifer. Then back at our son. Richard, not now. Please, my son begged. And then, Caleb stepped back. He actually stepped back. Jennifer grabbed George's hand and said, "Come on, baby. Let's go take a family photo." A nearby vendor was offering free portraits. "Only families," the vendor called out cheerfully. Jennifer looked pointedly at Caleb. "Ready, babe?" He glanced once at our son. Then turned to Jennifer. "Yeah. Let's go." My son didn't cry. He just nodded and walked back to me. His voice was soft, too soft. "I don't think he wants us anymore." That night, he didn't eat dinner. He didn't play. He just sat in bed holding the toy drone Caleb had given him months ago, never used, barely touched. Then he said something that made my blood run cold. "Maybe I could pretend to be George." "What?" He looked up at me. "I can call her mom too. If it means I get to stay with Dad." I pulled him into my arms so hard he gasped. "No. You never have to pretend to be anyone else." He was silent for a long time. Then finally whispered, "I'm really tired, Mom. I don't want to chase him anymore." That night, I sat in the living room for hours, staring at the cake Caleb had sent after the daycare incident. I'd saved the receipt, thinking nothing of it. Now I saw the logo. A boutique cake shop. I remembered something Jennifer had said a year ago. My best friend runs a little dessert business. I told Caleb to check it out sometime. Suddenly, I couldn't breathe. I pulled the bakery's page up online. It was hers. The same cake shop that had delivered the peanut-laced cake that nearly killed my son. I grabbed my phone and dialed Caleb. He didn't answer. But now I knew. It wasn't a mistake. She had done it. She had sent a cake laced with peanuts, knowing full well about Richard's allergy. And Caleb had either known and ignored it, or been too blind to see the truth. Either way, he let her near our child. And that was the final line. No more chances. No more explanations. Just a countdown to departure. The morning after the amusement park, Caleb called. I didn't answer. Not the first time. Not the second. Not the seventh. Each ring was a reminder that for years, I had always picked up, even when he didn't deserve it. This time, I let it ring. My son was still asleep, clutching a stuffed rabbit we bought on our walk home. He hadn't said a word all evening. I didn't push him. He didn't need comfort anymore, he needed peace. Across town, Caleb was spiraling. Jennifer was making pancakes when he asked her, out of nowhere, "Hey, that bakery you mentioned, your friend's shop. What's it called?" She paused, spatula midair. "Oh. Sweet Hazel. Why?" His stomach turned. "That's where I ordered the cake for Richard," he said slowly. Jennifer turned, too quickly, too forced. "Oh? That's funny. I thought you used that chain place." "No. I double-checked the order. It was Hazel's." Jennifer's eyes flickered. Just for a second. But Caleb noticed. She laughed nervously. "Must have been a mistake. I mean, accidents happen." Caleb nodded slowly, but his pulse had quickened. He remembered something, Richard's file at the office. The allergy forms I had once emailed to the school, then CC'd to him. Severe peanut allergy. Documented. Repeated. Clear. He'd seen it. Jennifer had too. A sickness swelled in his chest. "Was it you?" he asked. Jennifer blinked. "Was what me?" "The cake. Did you know it had peanuts?" Silence. Then came the flick of the burner knob. "I think," she said coolly, "you're overreacting." That was her tell, when she got cold, not defensive. When she used logic to mask cruelty. Caleb stood slowly from the kitchen stool. "I need to check something," he said. Jennifer tilted her head. "Gavin, don't do anything stupid." That name, Gavin, he hadn't heard it in weeks. She only called him that when she wanted something. But this time, it didn't work. He left the house without another word, got in his car, and drove straight to the hospital where Richard had been admitted. Records confirmed it. The reaction came from a cake with concentrated peanut extract. He sat in the parking lot for 15 minutes, staring at the report. Not once in the past 6 years had he cried. Not when Richard was born and he missed it. Not when he forgot their anniversary. Not even when Nora stopped sleeping in the same bed. But now, in the front seat of his luxury car, Caleb broke. He wasn't just a bad father. He'd let someone endanger his son. Someone he'd trusted. Someone he'd defended. He called my number again. Still off. He tried Mia's number, got voicemail. Then he did something unthinkable. He drove to our old apartment. It was empty. Boxes gone. Curtains gone. Every trace of us, wiped clean. Only one thing remained. A ceramic jar, broken and glued together. The same one Richard had made for him in kindergarten, hoping Caleb would use it for coffee. It had been swept off the counter once. Caleb barely remembered knocking it over. Richard had cried for hours. Now, it sat quietly on the windowsill. A farewell. Caleb picked it up carefully. A tiny note had been folded and tucked inside. You missed the firsts. Don't miss the last chance to be a better man, for yourself, not for us. Because we're not waiting anymore. He sank to his knees on the carpet. That night, Caleb returned home to find Jennifer lounging on the couch, George building with Lego nearby. Jennifer turned toward him. Are you done with your tantrum? He didn't answer. Just looked at her. Really looked. The layers of pretense. The casual possessiveness. The constant framing of herself as the real victim. And then he asked the question that had been haunting him since the hospital. Is George even mine? Jennifer went still. I asked you something, he said, quieter this time. She laughed. What kind of question is that? The kind you answer. With a yes or a no. Jennifer's lip curled. After everything I've done for you, she hissed. I gave you a family when she left you. No. You took a family from me, Caleb said, voice shaking. You saw a man drifting and tied him down with guilt. Jennifer didn't deny it. She just stood up, said, I think you should sleep on the couch tonight. He stared at her like she was made of glass, thin, reflective, ready to shatter. Get out. What? You. George. Out of my house. Jennifer stepped back, stunned. You can't just throw us out. I can. And I will. She stormed toward him, finger pointed. You don't mean this. You're just upset. She's poisoned your mind. Poisoned? No. You did that, with cake. Jennifer's expression changed. For a split second, she knew she was caught. Leave, Caleb repeated. George looked up from his Lego, sensing tension. Mommy. Jennifer grabbed him by the wrist. We're going. They slammed the door behind them. Caleb stood in silence, staring at the place where his life had just ended, and maybe where it could begin again. He pulled out his phone. One last message to me. I'm sorry. I see it all now. If there's anything left of me in your heart, please let me see my son. But I had already made my choice. By then, my bags were packed. My passport was stamped. My son was resting his head on my lap in the plane seat. I looked at Caleb's message, then turned off my phone. The plane rumbled down the runway. And just before takeoff, my son whispered, Is this really it, Mom? We're not going back. I kissed his forehead. No, baby. This time, we're flying toward something. Not running away. France didn't feel like escape. It felt like oxygen. The first morning we woke up in the tiny upstairs room above Mia's flower shop, I expected to feel panic. Guilt. Doubt. Instead, I opened the window and felt only sunlight. The streets were quiet. Cobblestones stretched out like stories waiting to be told. The smell of croissants drifted in from the bakery across the square. And for the first time in months, my son slept in. No nightmares. No crying. No calls for a father who never showed up. He needed this even more than I did. Emma hugged us tight when we arrived. She didn't ask questions. She simply handed me a spare key and said, You don't have to explain, Nora. You just have to breathe. So I did. We started small. Mornings with tea and toast. Afternoons arranging flowers, taking walks by the canal, teaching Richard how to count in French. He was a natural. A sponge. By the end of the first week, he was already correcting my pronunciation. He smiled more. He ate better. He laughed, not the careful, quiet giggle I'd grown used to, but a real, belly-deep laugh that turned his face red. And he stopped asking about Caleb. Not because he forgot, but because he had let go. One day, I found him helping Emma carry boxes into the shop. He had tucked a little name tag into his shirt pocket. Assistant florist, Richard. He grinned. I think this is my new job now. I knelt down. What about school? He shrugged. That's my second job. That night, we celebrated with takeout pizza and cartoons dubbed in French. He fell asleep with a slice of pepperoni still in his hand. I tucked him in and whispered, I'm proud of you. He didn't open his eyes, but he smiled. Back in our room, I opened my phone. Caleb had sent more messages. I didn't read them. But I didn't delete them either. They stacked up like missed calls to the past. Each one a reminder of what we left behind. Meanwhile, Caleb was unraveling. Jennifer was gone. For real this time. She'd left town after the paternity results came back. George wasn't his. She didn't leave a note. Didn't apologize. Just vanished, taking her lies, manipulations, and borrowed love with her. For the first time in years, Caleb had no one in his house. No child's footsteps. No laughter. No daddy. Only silence. He wandered the empty hallways like a stranger in a home he never bothered to know. The ceramic jar Richard had made sat shattered on the floor. He couldn't bring himself to throw it out. He tried to go back to work, but even his assistant said he looked different. People whispered about his divorce. His demotion. His absence. He didn't correct them. Because what was left to defend? At night, he scrolled through his camera roll, looking for pictures of Richard. There weren't many. He'd been too busy living someone else's life to document his real one. So he watched old video clips on my social feed. A birthday dance. A playground fall. A blurry drawing of a family, Richard, me, and a stick figure with a tie labeled Dad. He replayed that video 5 times. Then 10. Until his battery died. And still, he stayed up, staring at nothing. Sometimes he would leave the house just to drive past our old street. The windows were dark. A for rent sign hung in the yard. He sat in the car outside for hours, hoping he'd see something that wasn't there. Back in France, Richard was thriving. He made friends at school. Picked up French like it was a second skin. Started piano lessons, then quit after 2 weeks because he hated it. I let him. He chose soccer instead. I didn't argue. He was learning what choice felt like. We opened a small corner of the flower shop just for him, his own kid-designed bouquets. They were chaotic, messy, and somehow sold out every weekend. He called them adventure bundles. One day, a customer asked who helped him name them. He said, "My mom. She's the smart one." That evening, I cried in the pantry for 20 minutes. Happy tears this time. MIA said I should take a vacation. I told her this was the vacation. We'd stopped surviving. We were finally living. Then, one Thursday morning, the bell over the shop door rang. I was elbow deep in sunflowers, humming to myself. And then I heard it. Nora. I didn't turn around right away. I knew that voice. Tired. Dry. Still trying to sound confident. But behind it, there was something unfamiliar. Regret. I turned slowly. There he was. Caleb looked older. Paler. Like someone had drained the arrogance from his veins. His hair was uncombed. His eyes were swollen. And he wasn't holding any gifts. He just stood there, empty-handed and unsure. "Hi," he said. "You still make the coffee I like." I didn't move. "What are you doing here?" "I had to see you. Both of you." "We're busy." "I know," he said. "But I'm not." Silence. Then he added, quietly, I just wanted to say sorry. Not the text version. Not the emailed version. The real one. I stared at him. For a moment, I saw a flicker of the man I once loved. But I also saw the one who missed everything. You didn't just miss birthdays, I said. You missed becoming a father. He swallowed hard. I want to make it right. I shook my head. You want to feel better. He flinched. Just then, Richard came in from the back, holding a clipboard. He froze when he saw Caleb. His expression didn't change. He walked past him and stood next to me. Uncle, he said flatly. Do you need flowers? Caleb's mouth trembled. I'm your dad. No, Richard said. You're just the man who used to make Mom cry. With that, he turned and went back to the storeroom. Caleb didn't chase him. He just stood there for a long moment. Then said, Can I at least come back tomorrow? Try again. I looked down at my hands, covered in pollen. You can come, I said. But don't expect anything. He nodded. And left. The next morning, I found a note on the counter from Richard. Don't worry. I'll be polite. But I won't call him Dad. Caleb came the next day. He brought no gifts. No flowers. Just himself, and 2 empty hands that shook slightly when Richard looked at him. We didn't speak much. Richard offered him a chow in the corner of the shop and then walked away. He didn't glare or shout or cry. He simply sat at the counter beside me, coloring a new bouquet label. Caleb watched him quietly. I remember when he was born, he said suddenly. You wouldn't stop crying. I thought something was wrong. I didn't look up. Something was wrong. You left 10 minutes after he was born to take a phone call. He flinched. I was scared. You didn't come back for hours. He went quiet again. Later that day, I found Richard staring at a wilted bouquet Caleb had tried arranging while we worked. It's crooked, he said, matter of fact. It's his first one, I replied. Richard nodded. He'll need more practice. It was the kindest thing he'd said since Caleb arrived. But it didn't mean forgiveness. That night, Caleb emailed me a list of things he wanted to do with Richard. A museum. A puppet show. Even a soccer match. I didn't reply. 2 days later, a package arrived. Inside was a soccer jersey, 1 size too big, and a letter written in Caleb's uneven handwriting. Dear Richard, I don't expect you to forgive me. But I'd like to try being someone you might not hate. Maybe we could play catch sometime. Or just sit and talk. You choose. Dad, if you'll let me be that again. Richard read it. Then folded the letter back up, placed it in the trash, and walked away. He didn't say a word. That evening, I reopened my email to find one from my attorney. Mr. Caleb Grant has filed a response to your divorce petition. He is contesting full custody. I dropped the phone. For a long time, I just stared at the screen, blinking. After everything, after Richard rejected him, after his guilt, his apologies, he still wanted control? I didn't tell Richard. But when MIA saw the court letter crumpled in the bin later that night, she simply said, burn it. That's all he's trying to do now. Set your peace on fire. The next day, I asked Caleb to meet me at a cafe. Neutral ground. He looked hopeful when he saw me, like he thought we were finally going to talk about reconciliation. But I had no interest in patching up what never truly existed. You filed for custody. He nodded. Shared custody. Why? Because I want to be in his life. You had 7 years to be in his life. I was wrong. But I'm trying now. No, I said flatly. You're reacting now. There's a difference. Caleb sat back, looking wounded. I thought we were making progress. Progress would have been not sending me court papers without warning. I wanted to feel like I still mattered. You don't file legal claims for that. He didn't argue. But he didn't withdraw either. I stood up. Take it to court then. Let's make it official. He looked up. You'd really make Richard go through that? I wouldn't, I said. But you would. That shut him up. 2 weeks later, it was Richard's school art fair. His class had been working for months on a collaborative mural. Each child painted something that made them feel safe. Richard painted a flower shop, a little house above it, and a woman with a tied ponytail and purple apron. I stood beside him when he pointed it out. "That's us," he said proudly. "Is anyone else in the picture?" He paused. "Maybe someday I'll add someone. If they really earn it." That was his forgiveness, not promised, not denied, just paused. But Caleb wasn't there, even though he had been invited. He texted 5 hours after it ended. "Sorry. Got tied up. Work emergency." Richard didn't react. But later that night, I saw him rip the corner off the jersey Caleb had given him. Just a little tear. I didn't ask why. I knew. A week later, a local newspaper ran a piece on our flower shop. It included a photo, me, MIA, and Richard holding a kid-created bouquet. The article went viral in our neighborhood. The next morning, Caleb showed up, unshaven, flustered. "Why didn't you tell me about the interview?" "Why would I?" "Because I'm his father. You're the man who keeps missing the moments that count." He looked at Richard, who was standing by the register counting coins. "You're building a life here," Caleb said. "Without me." "I started building it the day you walked away." "I didn't walk." "Yes. You did. Every day you didn't show up. Every time you said next time. Every cake. Every missed birthday. Every minute you gave to Jennifer instead." His face turned pale. "You think I haven't changed? I think you finally want something you can't fix." Then, loud enough for a few nearby customers to hear, Caleb said, "You can't erase me." Richard looked over. He had heard it too. He walked up, slipped his hand into mine, and looked up at his father. "You erased yourself, Dad." The words hung in the air. Caleb opened his mouth. But nothing came out. He turned. And walked away. No promises this time. No drone deliveries. No calls. Just silence. That night, Richard asked me, "Do you think he'll stop trying now?" I considered it. I think he finally saw what it looks like when we stop waiting. Caleb didn't come back the next day. Or the day after that. For the first time since he'd arrived in France, the space around us felt still again. Richard noticed. But he didn't ask. He just started waking up earlier, helping MIA open the shop, and humming to himself while trimming stems. His French was improving. So was his handwriting. So was his heart. One morning, I found a note taped to the mirror in his crooked block letters. "Mom, I love our new life." It was only 5 words, but they melted everything. He was healing. We both were. Meanwhile, Caleb was falling apart. Alone in his hotel room, surrounded by silence, he had no more excuses. No distractions. No Jennifer. No fake son. No half-kept promises to cushion the truth. He tried working, answering emails, approving budgets, but nothing stuck. He stared at spreadsheets and couldn't remember what they meant. He dropped his phone in the sink. Twice. He forgot to eat. When his assistant called to ask when he was returning to work, Caleb replied, "What work?" That night, he went through every photo he had of Richard. He could count them on one hand. Most were blurry. Some didn't even show Richard's face, just the edge of a birthday cake, or a toy someone else had bought. There was one from when Richard was 3, standing in a kiddie pool, waving at the camera. Caleb didn't remember taking it. He looked at his own face in the reflection of the hotel window. Hollow. Sharp. Exhausted. That's when he made a decision. He would fly home, pack up his house, and officially sign the divorce papers. If he couldn't be forgiven, he'd at least give Nora her freedom. But before he left, he wanted to find one thing, the truth about that night, the night his life had split into 2 paths. The night he ended up in bed with Nora. Back then, she had been a secretary. Quiet. Efficient. Always on time. He'd liked her, but never thought about her much beyond work. Then Jennifer left him. Went abroad. Broke it off. He spiraled. Got drunk. Blacked out. And woke up next to Nora. He hadn't remembered what happened. He just assumed she'd taken advantage. After all, she liked him. It had been obvious. The lingering glances. The careful notes. The way she remembered how he took his coffee. It was easier to blame her. And once she got pregnant, he proposed out of guilt, not love. That's what he told himself. But something Nora had said weeks ago now echoed in his mind. Was it me climbing into bed, or was it you forcing yourself on me? That line had haunted him. What if it hadn't been what he thought? What if he had gotten it wrong? He called his old driver from that night. Asked about the hotel. The timeline. The condition he was in. The driver hesitated. Sir, you weren't the one who couldn't stand up. What? You were upset. But not drunk. You helped Miss Nora check in. You were the one holding her hand. Caleb's stomach dropped. He checked his email logs from that night. There were messages sent. Coherent ones. Then he checked surveillance footage from the hotel lobby. He still had contacts there. The video came through. There he was, walking beside Nora. Laughing. Hand on her back. Opening the door. Guiding her in. Then he froze the frame. He wasn't staggering. He wasn't unconscious. He wasn't tricked. He had chosen. He had wanted to be with her. And he had lied to himself for years to justify the life he threw away. All because admitting he could love someone after Jennifer was too threatening to his pride. He'd blamed her. Punished her. And raised a child in the shadow of a story that was never true. He stared at the frozen screen. Then dropped his phone and wept. 3 days later, the documents arrived in my mail. Signed. Stamped. Final. The letter inside was brief. I was wrong, about you, about everything. Thank you for raising him right. He deserves better. And so do you. Caleb. I didn't cry. I didn't smile either. I just folded the letter and placed it in a drawer I didn't open often. One that held old hospital bracelets, baby socks, and photos Richard had drawn of a family that never quite formed. That night, I sat on the balcony with a glass of tea, staring at the stars. Mia joined me. You look like someone who finally closed the book, she said. Maybe, I whispered. Or maybe I just started a new one. Downstairs, Richard was humming again. He was building something with his blocks. A tall structure with a little flower shop on one side. There was a tiny stick figure beside it. I walked in and pointed. Who's that? He smiled. That's me. And who's that next to you? He paused. Then added a little ponytail with the tip of his marker. You, he said. I knelt down beside him. No daddies. No third figures. Just us. Just peace. That night, I checked my messages one last time. Nothing new from Caleb. And that was okay. Some stories don't need a dramatic ending. Sometimes the quiet truth is enough. 1 year later, spring bloomed early. The flower shop was busier than ever. Tourists loved our story, mother and son starting over in a foreign country, building something from scratch. Locals came for Richard's adventure bundles more than my curated bouquets. He had grown taller. Smarter. A little more serious. He still laughed easily, but he didn't look for his father in crowds anymore. Some things had faded completely. Others had simply found peace. Our days had rhythm. Morning tea. School runs. Soccer practice. Late-night book readings. Life in France wasn't flashy, but it was ours, and it was whole. One Sunday afternoon, we were arranging daffodils for a wedding client when Mia popped her head in with a grin. Guess who just walked past the window? I looked up. Please don't say a tax officer. Nope. Worse. An ex. I paused. Which one? The one with regrets tattooed on his forehead. I walked to the door and peeked through the glass. There he was. Caleb. He stood across the street, staring at the shop like it held answers he'd never found. He looked different this time. Not exhausted. Not angry. Just quiet. When I didn't move, Emmy asked, "Want me to shoo him away?" "No," I said. "Let him decide." I went back to trimming stems. A minute later, the bell above the door jingled. Caleb stepped in, eyes flicking between the walls, the bouquets, the soft jazz playing in the background. Then he saw Richard. Richard didn't freeze. He didn't run. He simply raised one eyebrow. "You're early," Richard said flatly. Caleb looked confused. "Early? For the art festival? It's not until next weekend." Caleb blinked. "Oh. I didn't know you had something coming up." "That's because I don't tell people who don't show up." The words weren't cruel. Just honest. I glanced at my son, then at Caleb. He was holding something behind his back. A small ceramic mug. Handcrafted. Glossy green glaze. Slightly lopsided. He held it out. "I made this, for you. For your shop." I hesitated. Then took it in both hands. It wasn't perfect. But this time, it wasn't broken either. Richard stood beside me, arms crossed. "Did you really make it?" "Pottery class. Tuesday nights." Richard nodded. "Looks like you still need practice." Caleb smiled faintly. "That's fair." He shifted awkwardly. "I know I shouldn't keep showing up. I'm not here to ask for anything." "Then why are you here?" I asked. He looked at me. Really looked. "Because when I first met you, I was so stuck in my own grief, I couldn't see the woman who stood in front of me. I punished you for loving me when I didn't know what love was. And I'm sorry." Silence. Even Emma had stopped arranging her flowers in the back. Caleb continued. "I'm not expecting forgiveness. I just wanted you to know. I finally understand what I lost. And I hope, someday, you find someone who never makes you beg to be seen." I swallowed hard. There was nothing left to say. And maybe that was the point. He nodded once, placed the mug gently on the counter, and turned to go. Richard called after him. "Wait." Caleb stopped. Richard walked over slowly, pulled a single flower from a nearby vase, an orange lily, and handed it to him. "For your next class," he said. "Maybe you'll make something better." Caleb accepted it like it was a medal. "Thank you," he whispered. Then he walked out, lily in hand, and didn't look back. This time, Richard watched him leave. Not with sadness. Not with anger. Just peace. Later that evening, after the shop closed, we had dinner on the balcony. Just me, Richard, and MIA. He was telling us about a new friend at school when he suddenly went quiet. "Mom," he asked. "Yes." "Do you think it's okay that I don't hate him?" I reached across the table and took his hand. "It's more than okay," I said. "It means your heart's stronger than what he broke." He smiled. That night, while tucking him into bed, he turned to me sleepily. "Mom." "Him. I think I want to keep my last name." I blinked. "Okay. Why?" "Because it's mine. And I want it to mean something better than what it used to." I kissed his forehead. "It already does." As he drifted off, I sat by the window, the ceramic mug on the shelf beside me. It held no flowers. No tea. Just a quiet symbol of closure. A few weeks later, the art festival arrived. Richard's painting was the talk of the event. It showed a small flower shop under a bright sky. Two figures stood beside it, a woman in purple, and a boy holding a sign that read "We're okay now." When someone asked him about the sign, he said, "It means we don't need fixing anymore." I smiled. Because he was right. We weren't healed because someone came back. We were whole because we stopped waiting. And because sometimes, the best kind of revenge isn't fire or fury. It's happiness. Built quietly. Lived fully. And shared with someone who never made you feel second.